Now we're just going to pick up from where we left off when I saw you guys yesterday, but I do just want to give you an idea about where we're going today, because what we're going to be doing today is we're going to take a look at how this war shifts, how it changes. And to be honest, there's some good news and some bad news about it. Now, before we really get into that, I want to back up to what we were talking about yesterday, because when I saw you guys yesterday, we were discussing how this war just keeps dragging out. There's no real end in sight. In fact, there's no real goal other than to stop the spread of communism, and we don't really know how to do it because we're not fighting against an army, we're fighting against guerrillas. So we have this weird situation where we're really determining how well we're doing by body count. That's really it. Even that body count, though, suggests things are going well for us. I was telling you guys yesterday, we have at one point, it's up to 25-1. Great, we're winning. But it keeps going on. It keeps dragging out. And this is exactly what the guerrillas want. This is how you fight a guerrilla war. Make it so the other side doesn't want to keep going. What we're going to see is as tensions start to boil over at home, this war makes a shift. Now, I'll be the first one to say it. What the Viet Cong does here is a big gamble. And to be honest, I don't think that the gamble is really worth it. What they're going to do is they're going to transform. Now, I always kind of say, because this is the guerrilla warfare playbook. Eventually, after the war's gone on long enough, guerrillas always want to advance. They want to progress. These guerrillas are following the handbook. And what they are looking to progress into is a conventional fighting force, an army with uniforms and battle lines. And this is where it gets this kind of strange idea that takes place. By 1968, the Viet Cong wants to transform. They want to do something that a normal, conventional army would do. Now, I would usually kind of get questions at this point, and I will tell you, I don't really have a good answer. I don't know why they would want to transform. I don't know why they'd want to progress, because they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're dragging the war out. They're just inflicting casualties when they can. They're actually succeeding. The Tet Offensive is going to show them changing. The Tet Offensive is going to be planned out by a Vietnamese guerrilla general by the name of General Giep. And Giep is, he's clever, but again, I don't really get why he would want to do this, other than the obvious that we'll talk about more in a little bit. Now, I do want to just kind of talk specifics here. This is going to be called the Tet Offensive because it takes place during the Tet New Year. Now, without getting into it, you guys know like the Chinese New Year where it's like the year of the dog, the year of the rat, like that sort of thing? That's what this is in Southeast Asia. This is just their New Year. Now, what this is it's going to be this very coordinated, very planned out, very well-timed offensive. On January 31st of 68, we're going to see all at the same time 70,000 communist guerrillas all launch a surprise offensive on multiple South Vietnamese cities, all at the same time on the same day. Does this sound like what guerrillas do? No, this is them transforming. In one moment, they are going to spring this surprise offensive all at once. Now, I want to kind of play this out because, like I say, I'm not exactly sure why they would want to transform, but it does show something. So first off, over 100 cities are under attack in South Vietnam. Is this bad for the U.S.?
Yes.
Sure. But let's talk about why it's good.
Because they're not hiding anymore.
They're not hiding anymore. They're not refusing to engage a superior opponent. They've come out of hiding, and now we can identify who we're fighting against. So I say this, is this also good news for us?
Very good news.
Finally, they've come out of hiding. Finally, they're identifying themselves. This coordinated attack on 100 cities in South Vietnam shows this guerrilla warfare changing. It shows them transforming. They're identifying themselves, and now we know who the enemy is. This is, in one way, good news for us. As this offensive takes place, we're going to start to actually inflict some real serious casualties. We're going to push them to a point where they call off this offensive. It's really a military disaster for the Viet Cong. So guess what they do after this?
Hide.
They go back into hiding. They never are going to have another coordinated offensive again after Tet. So is this a military victory for us?
Yes.
Absolutely. Probably the biggest military victory we had through the whole war. But does it look bad? The people at home start saying, I thought we were winning this war. You keep telling us about the body count, the kill ratio, 25-1. If we're winning this war like that, how is it that they have the strength and the coordination to pull off an attack on 100 cities throughout South Vietnam? We must be being lied to. People in the United States start saying, is it the media who's lying to us? Is it the government who's lying to us? Is it both? Either way, we got to change something. And like I say, a military victory, absolutely. Tet was a disaster militarily for the Viet Cong. We're going to have this comparison of about 2,000 US dead to 50,000 communist dead. Do the math real fast. What's the kill ratio? 25-1. 25-1 kill ratio. But people back home are saying, we've heard this before. How are we winning the war if they can pull this off? We're sick and tired of being stuck in Vietnam. We need to do something else. Now, it just so happens that this is timed during a presidential election. A presidential election where both candidates have as really their biggest talking point what's going on in Vietnam. If you're going to get elected president, you better tell the American people something's going to change. So I'll ask you guys, if you were running for president, what would you be campaigning on? What would you want to change about Vietnam? Do you want to send more troops there? Or do you want to send fewer? Or more bombings? Or whatever? Cameron, what do you think?
I would send more bombings
Okay?
because when you send a whole bunch of troops, that's taking away Americans from their families, and that's not what Americans want.
So you don't want to see any more bodies, we don't want to see injuries, but you want to send more?
No, we want to send bombs. If
Okay.
we send bombs, it won't inflict damage on us, it will only inflict damage on them.
Okay? We did do the bombing though.
Like doing more than...
More than bomb them
more-
back to the Stone Age?
Yes.
More than that.
Bomb them back to the prehistoric age.
Pre-Stone Age, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you know that all their supplies are coming from North Vietnam,
Okay,
you go.
you can do that. Boom.
Yeah, also they don't, it's not like Russia is explicitly backing them up.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah,
probably
they
not.
They're giving them supplies, now they're not putting troops on the ground.
Yeah, because in during like the Korean War, the reason we didn't is because one, the Russians were sending troops.
Okay.
And but there are no Russian troops right now, so if we nuke them,
Okay, what do you want to use the nuclear bomb against?
North Vietnam, where they're getting most of their supplies.
Okay, so you want to destroy North Vietnam and China's not going to have a problem with that? How do you get rid of the guerrillas that are infiltrating South Vietnam? You want to use the nuclear bomb against South Vietnam too?
Nah.
Alright. I asked for your thoughts and I appreciate it. Because these are ideas. We got a new president coming into power, and if he's going to win the election The American people don't want to hear more troops. They want to hear less troops. President Nixon's going to take office in January of 1969. And he runs his campaign on the idea of, I'm going to get us out of Vietnam. Now, if he says, I'm going to pull us out of Vietnam, does it look like he's weak against the communists? Yeah. So he needs a plan. His plan, he entitles it Peace with Honor. What he's suggesting is, we're going to end our involvement in Vietnam, and we're going to start negotiating. But if you start pulling troops out, you're negotiating from a position of weakness. So we need to get the American troops out and replace them with someone else. What Nixon says is, hey, if the South Vietnamese want to protect themselves from the communists, they're going to have to stand up to them. They're going to have to fight for their own country. This is their war. We'll help them, we'll supply them, but we're sick of spending American blood in South Vietnam. We are going to have these American troops replaced by South Vietnamese troops in what Nixon calls Vietnamization. We are going to train the South Vietnamese in how to fight this war on their own. Now again, we'll give them supplies, we'll give them cash, but we saw what happened before when we were giving them supplies and cash. Is it enough? No. We had to send troops years before this. So the idea of this, I guess in theory it would work, because what Nixon says is for every one American we pull out, we will train one South Vietnamese to do the fighting. So I guess if you're doing that, it sounds okay. But does anyone else think this is going to have some issues?
Yeah.
No. I foresee problems. But at the same time, the American people are sick of fighting this war. They don't have the stomach for it. The guerrillas are right. If you just drag it out, eventually that superior opponent gets sick of fighting. We're going to start pulling American troops out with the idea that they're being replaced by the South Vietnamese. Now, I'll go ahead and just ask this right now. During this time, how are we doing at fighting this war?
Terrible.
We're not doing very well. So if we're going to just train the South Vietnamese, how do you think they're going to do?
Even worse.
This is what's kind of so bizarre about this idea. Nixon probably believes it. He probably thinks it's going to work. But also at the same time, he's a politician. He needs to get elected. This is what the American people want to hear, is that we're bringing the troops home. We're going to begin Vietnamization, and we are going to have negotiations. We're going to agree to a ceasefire in 1973. Now that ceasefire is negotiated, like I say, it's negotiated from a position of weakness. The Americans are coming out, and in theory, the South Vietnamese will replace them. During these negotiations, you have an American general, Westmoreland, he was in charge, and Westmoreland actually physically meets General Giep, the Vietnamese communist general I was telling you about earlier today. And he sits down with Giep, and this is the first time he's seen him. Now, Westmoreland is about 6 feet tall, and he's a large American. He's probably about 220 pounds.
Oh, geez.
He's a big guy. General Giep was about 5'2" and about 110 pounds. So here's Westmoreland looking at Giep, and they're kind of, they greet each other, they start the negotiations, and Westmoreland's just so frustrated, because he meets this guy, and he's like, you're the one that's in charge of all this guerrilla action? And Giep just kind of stands there and goes, and Westmoreland goes, the only time you guys actually came out and faced us during Tet, we just destroyed you. It was just a beating. And Giep kind of goes, and Westmoreland's getting more and more frustrated, and he's saying, you couldn't even beat us in an actual,